Upon awakening, a man and woman independently grapple with an uncanny sensation of crying upon waking up, with no memory of their dreams but an enduring sense of profound loss. This mysterious feeling fuels their relentless search for that which is missing. The sole memory they retain is the sight of a beautiful comet passing close to Earth. Mitsuha, the woman, one day wakes up puzzled, particularly by her own body, to such an extent that she even begins to explore herself physically to confirm her reality. However, her younger sister walks in during this peculiar act, summoning her for breakfast. In the following days, Mitsuha's grandmother and sister recount how she had been behaving oddly. Just as she begins to ponder their remarks, a town-wide broadcast about an upcoming mayoral election interrupts her thoughts. They choose to switch off the broadcast and turn on the TV, which broadcasts news of a comet that is expected to be visible to the naked eye for several days in a month. While walking to school with her sister and the friends Sayaka and Katsuhiko, Mitsuha is troubled when her friends also note her strange behavior, attributing it to stress. They encounter Mitsuha's father, the current mayor, during a campaign speech. His public reminder to Mitsuha about maintaining a good posture only embarrasses her, making her hasten to school. During class, she discovers a mysterious note in her notebook and is chided by the teacher for seemingly forgetting her own name. Her friends mention her disoriented state the previous day, of which Mitsuha has no memory. Mitsuha shares that she's been having a strange dream, feeling like she's living someone else's life. Sayaka suspects it might be stress-induced amnesia given an upcoming ceremony Mitsuha has to participate in. Frustrated, Mitsuha wishes to escape her rural town. At home, her grandmother shares their ancestral stories and emphasizes their duty to preserve their traditions, especially at their shrine. Mitsuha's father's disinterest in preserving these traditions, instead focusing on politics, displeases her grandmother. When the ceremony arrives, Mitsuha and her sister perform a traditional dance in front of the town, produce the oldest form of sake as per tradition, and feel embarrassed in front of their peers. Overwhelmed, Mitsuha expresses a desire to be a handsome Tokyo guy in her next life. The phone alarm rings, awakening a high school boy named Taki, who is perplexed by his unfamiliar surroundings and his appearance in the mirror. After an odd interaction with his departing father, Taki sets off for school in Tokyo. Taki's friends, Tsukasa and Shinta, notice his strange behavior, almost as if he is a different person. Taki ends up getting a job at a restaurant where he struggles with his duties. A difficult customer creates trouble, and Taki's older colleague, Miki, steps in to mitigate the situation. After their shift, Taki helps Miki repair her skirt, impressing her with his unexpected sewing skills. On his way home, Taki ponders the detail of his dream and finds numerous pictures of Miki on his phone. The following day, a man named Taki awakens feeling disoriented. Puzzled, he discovers a name written on his hand and a note on his phone detailing events he has no recollection of. Discussing this with his friends, he learns that his behavior was peculiar the previous day. His bewilderment escalates when he reaches his workplace, and his co-workers express their resentment, accusing him of getting too close to a co-worker named Miki. Conversely, upon awakening, Mitsuha is startled to find her arm covered in unfamiliar writing. Her surprise intensifies when her sister walks in, inquiring if she will engage in the inexplicable behavior she displayed the previous day. Even more shocking, she discovers from classmates that she had acted uncharacteristically aggressive at school. Reflecting on these strange occurrences, both Taki and Mitsuha realize they have been switching bodies intermittently. The swaps occur at random during their sleep with no discernible pattern. Both jot down crucial information for the other to mitigate potential damage during these swaps. Despite these measures, adapting to each other's lives proves challenging. Mitsuha nudges Taki towards a relationship with Miki, while Taki, when in Mitsuha's body, receives a flood of love letters from her classmates, causing mutual frustration. During one body swap, Taki and Mitsuha's body is taken by her grandmother to a shrine in the mountains. There, her grandmother narrates tales of their deity, Musube, symbolizing the confluence of threads, people, and the flow of time. After reaching their destination, Taki learns the shrine's deity resides within a stone cave nestled amidst a tranquil field. As instructed, Taki leaves their ritual's sake offering in the cave, learning that their essence bound the deity to the shrine. Suddenly, Mitsuha's grandmother announces her awareness of Mitsuha's dreaming state, prompting Taki to wake up, finding himself inexplicably tearful. However, his focus soon shifts to an impending date with Miki. Meanwhile, Mitsuha wakes up, disappointed at missing the date with Miki, and finds herself crying for reasons unknown. Taki struggles to maintain his composure during the date with Miki. Although Mitsuha leaves behind some tips for him, Taki's attention strays, captivated by a picture resembling the scenery from Mitsuha's hometown. Miki realizes her secondary role on their date and decides to end it prematurely, asserting that Taki's affections lay elsewhere. As Taki checks his phone once again, he finds a note from Mitsuha mentioning the comet that should be visible at the end of their date. Looking up, Taki sees no such spectacle. He dials Mitsuha's number, which is in his contacts, but gets no answer. Meanwhile, Mitsuha receives a call from her friend Katsuhiko, inviting her to a festival where they can watch the comet. Though hesitant, she decides to join, surprising her friends with a new haircut. As they speculate about her change of style, she directs their attention to the spectacular sight of the comet soaring above them. In that moment, a fragment of the comet detaches and descends towards Earth, getting closer and closer to them. Taki's call remains unanswered as the automated response indicates that the number dialed is not in service. He concludes he will update Mitsuha about the unsuccessful date when they next swap bodies, but that day never arrives. Days turn into weeks without any body swap occurring, leading Taki to determine he must find the location of Mitsuha's town using only the knowledge and sights he remembers. He painstakingly sketches the mountain landscapes from memory and peruses the internet for any potential leads. One day, equipped with his collection of sketches, he embarks on a quest to locate Mitsuha's village. As he prepares to board the train departing Tokyo, he's intercepted by Miki and Shikasa, who have noticed his recent peculiar behavior and have decided to accompany him to ensure his well-being. They assume he has met someone online and is now on his way to meet her in person. The shock is considerable when Taki discloses he doesn't know where this person lives and his only leads are his drawn sketches. They scour the countryside, inquiring with locals about the depicted landscapes in the drawings, but to no avail. While dining in a secluded, family-run ramen shop, Taki is ready to abandon the pursuit, labeling it a misguided idea from the start. Suddenly, the shop's waitress recognizes the scene from one of his sketches, revealing that it depicts the town of Itomori. Her husband confirms, stating that the sketch is an exact representation of the town. Excited by the news, Taki's joy is short-lived as they learn that the town no longer exists. Confused, Taki learns from the shop owner, who graciously offers to drive them to the site, that a large piece of the passing comet struck Itomori, obliterating it and claiming the lives of most of its inhabitants. It takes some time for Taki to absorb the fact that Mitsuha, with whom he had been communicating just a few weeks prior, was a resident of the annihilated town. As he retrieves his phone to show the text notes they shared, they suddenly begin to vanish until all of them are gone. Staying at an inn for the night, Taki, Miki, and Tsukasa gather as much information as possible about the catastrophe. When they discover a book listing all the deceased, Taki is shattered to find Mitsuha's name, along with her families and friends, amongst the confirmed fatalities. Unable to comprehend his experiences, he starts to believe that it was all a figment of his imagination and narrative concocted from news coverage. In one of the books about Itomori, Miki notes that Taki constantly wears a braided cord around his wrists, a traditional craft from the region. When attention is drawn to it, Taki says he received it from someone in the past, though we can't remember who. Despite his memory lapse, he continues to wear it as a talisman. He recalls Mitsuha's grandmother explaining that these cords symbolize the flow of time. This realization inspires him to locate the shrine on a local area map, and he falls asleep in the process. However, Mitsuha's voice awakens him, and he hastily packs his things, leaving a note for Miki and Shikasa about proceeding alone. Convincing the ramen shop owner to drop him at Itomori once more, he sets off to explore the mountainside in search of the shrine, undeterred by the sudden rainfall. He identifies the path he traversed as Mitsuha and discovers the ancient cave. Inside, he finds offerings of sake left behind during his time in Mitsuha's body, one from her and one from her sister. Eagerly opening Mitsuha's bottle, he postulates that their timelines were not synchronized and the Mitsuha he knew was from 3 years prior. He pours himself a cup of her ceremonial sake, drinks it hastily, and beseeches the deity Musube for an opportunity to save her. Slipping on the wet ground, he falls backward, noticing an ancient depiction of a similar comet incident on the cave's ceiling. The consumed sake takes effect, and he feels as if he's falling into an endless abyss filled with Mitsuha's memories, guided by the braided cord on his wrist. He relives Mitsuha's life from her birth and the death of her mother to her father's estrangement from the Miyamizu shrine due to the grief of losing his wife. He also re-experiences all the memories from when they began swapping bodies up until the fateful moment when the comet piece struck her. He awakens once again in Mitsuha's body, overwhelmed with emotion, crying, and simultaneously confirming his reality. This unanticipated emotional display frightens Mitsuha's sister, who flees to school alone. Taki switches on the television and realizes it is the day the disaster is scheduled to occur. After sighing in relief, he contemplates how to prevent the impending tragedy. Mitsuha's grandmother enters and, despite Taki's surprise, discerns that it's not her granddaughter standing before her. Taki is astonished at her perceptiveness, leading her to reveal that she too had experienced similar strange, vivid dreams in her youth, but has since forgotten the specifics. Mitsuha's mother also had such experiences. Taki concludes that this phenomenon must be a trait shared within the Miyamizu lineage. The day's events might hinge upon this very moment, he suggests to her. He warns her of an impending comet strike at Ida Mori, predicting a disastrous outcome, everyone's demise. However, she counters him, arguing that his tale is too fantastical to garner belief. This doesn't deter Taki, who steadfastly sets off for school to rally Mitsuha's friends. Despite their surprise at Mitsuha's abrupt hairstyle change, Taki swiftly convinces them to abandon school to assist in his mission of saving the town. Despite struggling to grasp the tale of the comet, they consent and begin preparations. Thanks to the collaborative brainstorming efforts with Katsuhiko, they formulate a plan. The plan involves detonating a bomb to incapacitate the town's power supply. In the ensuing blackout, they intend to use the local emergency broadcast system to guide everyone to take refuge in the high school, an area Taki believes will be spared from the blast's devastating effects. Katsuhiko assumes the responsibility of acquiring the explosives from his father's construction company, while Sayaka is assigned to stand by in the school's broadcast room to disseminate the emergency message once the power goes out. Taki's role involves persuading Mitsuha's father to aid in the evacuation. Sayaka, however, grows apprehensive upon hearing the plan, fearing that their actions, lacking any concrete evidence, could lead to severe consequences. Yet Katsuhiko is fully committed. He presents Sayaka with his research on the comet, research he undertook after hearing Mitsuha's story. He discovered that the comet behaved exactly as she described when it last passed by over a millennium ago. Furthermore, their town is situated precisely where the comet fragment impacted Earth during its previous visit. Taki has an epiphany, realizing that the cave drawing depicts this very event and that the surrounding crater was formed by that impact. However, the plan encounters obstacles when Taki attempts to communicate with Mitsuha's father. Despite Mitsuha being his daughter, her father dismisses her warnings outright, suggesting she seek a medical evaluation for her mental well-being. This infuriates Taki, who almost confronts Mitsuha's father physically, and acts so unlike Mitsuha that it triggers doubt in her father's mind about her identity. Disheartened by this lack of support, Taki heads back to Mitsuha's home. En route, he encounters her sister and friends, urging them to avoid the festival that evening. Yet his frenzied demeanor only alarms them, prompting them to flee. Her sister is left bewildered by Mitsuha's erratic behavior, noting her sudden trip to Tokyo the previous day and her current conduct. Hearing about her visit to Tokyo surprises Taki, giving him the impression that Mitsuha might be at the shrine. Tatsuhiko and Sayaka also come to ask about her meeting with the mayor, but instead of responding, Taki seizes Katsuhiko's bicycle, instructing them to proceed with the plan while he dashes off to the shrine. Awakening in Taki's body, Mitsuha finds herself at the shrine and wonders about his intentions. As she leaves the shrine and ascends the crater's hill, she takes in the sight of her town, or rather, the remains of it, as it now lies in ruins. In that moment, she recalls everything and comes to the startling realization of her death. Meanwhile, Taki pushes the bicycle to its maximum, pedaling uphill to reach Mitsuha, a growing conviction that she's at the shrine taking hold within him. He recalls an incident from 3 years prior when Mitsuha impulsively decided to visit him in Tokyo, despite not knowing how to locate him. Despite her nervousness about the prospect of meeting him, she was determined to take that chance. Upon arriving in Tokyo, she attempted to call him, but to no avail. She resorted to visiting places she frequented while in his body, hoping to run into him. She harbored a deep-seated hope that they would recognize each other instantly, and that he would be glad to see her. As she was about to give up, she spotted him at a train station and hurriedly boarded his train. Gathering her courage, she approached him and, upon verifying his identity, spoke up. But when she called him by his name, his response, asking who she was, cut her deeply. She simply apologized for the inconvenience and disembarked at the next stop. As Mitsuha prepared to disembark, Taki impulsively asked her name. She hurriedly shouted it back at him, passing him the braided cord she regularly used for her hair, the very cord he cherished as a good luck charm. She disappeared into the crowd immediately after. Meanwhile, Taki, determined to reach the shrine, crashed Katsuhiko's bicycle on his uphill climb. Overcome with emotion, he realized she had found him 3 years earlier. Arriving at the crater, Taki called out to Mitsuha, and she responded. Although they could hear each other, they remained invisible to each other. Desperate to find each other, they tried and failed to touch hands when they crossed paths, leaving them feeling despondent. Yet, as twilight gave way to night, reality seemed to warp, allowing them to finally meet. Mitsuha found herself in her own body, Taki in his, and their joy was palpable upon finally seeing each other. He told her he'd come to find her, but it had been challenging due to the vast distance. Mitsuha, aware she had perished on that day, wondered how this was possible. Taki confessed he'd drunk her sake, leaving her embarrassed and calling him a pervert, not only for drinking her sake, but also for touching her chest while he was in her body. This elicited an apology from Taki, which led Mitsuha to notice her braided cord around his wrist. He handed it back to her, explaining how he'd held onto it for the past 3 years. She swiftly tied it back into her hair, soliciting a compliment from him, which he awkwardly failed to give. They both laughed heartily at this. Taki briefed her on his plan to save the townsfolk and her remaining responsibilities. As night approached, he suggested they write each other's names on their palms to remember each other. She agreed readily, but before she could write anything, night fell and she vanished. Taki swore he'd find her again, no matter where she was, but as he kept repeating her name, it began to fade from his memory. This upset him greatly, and he started yelling her name, but his pleas only echoed back. Meanwhile, Mitsuha was rushing towards the power station, repeating Taki's name to ensure she wouldn't forget. Katsukiko showed up with the explosives, and after confirming the comet's trajectory with Mitsuha, they relayed the instructions to Sayaka to begin broadcasting once the emergency power was activated. After setting the charges, they drove back to town on Katsuhiko's scooter. The explosives detonated, plunging the town into darkness and triggering the emergency broadcast system. At the town hall, they were inundated with calls from confused citizens, and the mayor was left baffled. Meanwhile, Katsuhiko and Mitsuha arrived at the festival grounds, urging people to evacuate to the school. Overwhelmed, Mitsuha broke down, unable to remember the name of someone crucial to her. Katsuhiko shook her out of her stupor, reminding her of the more pressing issue at hand. The town hall quickly traced the broadcast to its source, arresting Sayaka and issuing a new broadcast instructing people to stay calm. Katsuhiko's father found him at the festival grounds, questioning his strange behavior. Suddenly, they witnessed the comet fragmenting, a sight being watched by people worldwide. Most predicted the falling fragments were unlikely to impact any settlements. Observing the spectacle, Taki from 3 years prior stepped out of his father's apartment, watching the comet fall in the distance. In the meantime, Mitsuha was rushing towards the town hall, hoping to persuade her father to aid the evacuation. Her mind was filled with a fervent need to remember Taki's name.